Welcome back to another week, another sinister. It's me, your favorite Hot Topic employee, BOZE. I am still hoping that they don't sue me for that, but whatever. I read through a lot of true crime cases, telling you guys the stories all the time, reading through the research. This story in particular, I hadn't heard of before until I started reading through everything. I just want to let you know, this one is going to be a bit of a journey. Lauren Dickason was originally Lauren Fox, and she was born in South Africa. Her parents were Malcolm and Wendy Fox. Not much is known about her early childhood, like those really big formative years, but what she did talk about the most was going to this all-girls school. We all know girls can be amazing. Sisterhood is fantastic. But when it's not, and you're the outcast, the nerd, or someone deemed lower on the totem pole, girls can be vicious. They can be gossipy, they can be competitive, and they can be absolutely relentless. And that's exactly what Lauren's experience was. It was horrible. The girls basically climbed all over her to get to the top, putting her down, making fun of her, whatever they had to do in order to be the queen bee for the day. This created a deep, long-lasting depression in Lauren that she would never recover from. She had a pretty serious depressive episode when she was at the boarding school. I mean, guys, you know how it is sometimes. Can't get out of bed, don't want to brush your teeth, don't want to move, don't want to shower, no nothing. And if you've ever been in that state before, now imagine you're trapped in a boarding school where everybody's making fun of you because you can't get up to brush your hair that day. It happens, and I think that major depression is something that is so wildly misunderstood. Like, if you have a friend or a child or a parent that just has major depression, it is like a constant cloud just hanging over their head that really, truly, they cannot get out of. It walks with them all day, every day. And I mean, the best thing you can do is listen and support sometimes. And at the time, even though she was diagnosed with this, I don't think that anyone understood the severity of it, because they were like, oh, she's 15. Well, yeah, this is pretty bad. Well, we'll do this and that. But it just wasn't enough. However, Lauren decided that she was going to try to take her power back a little bit, and she decided to study medicine. You know, sometimes when something hurts you so badly, you decide, like, I'm going to try to conquer it by understanding it. I like that that's the route that she went. So later in life, she attends the University of Cape Town, and she gets her medical degree in 2004. By 2005, she was working at Pretoria East Hospital, and she ends up meeting a guy named Graham, who would later go on to be her husband. Now, this is a pivotal moment for her, because when people have major depression, the apathy is so high. Like, you barely have goals, you don't know where to go, it feels like nothing matters. With how much Lauren was struggling, I think it's really amazing that she managed to go through and get her degree and find love, but it was just always really dark. However, once she met Graham, she finally felt a little emotionally safe. This was the first person that could hold her emotions, not judge her for things, support her, and be there for her. And she decided that she wanted to be a mother. She wanted to be a mother so badly, and she wanted to raise a family with Graham. This episode is sponsored by Ollie. Ollie makes fresh human-grade food that your dog is gonna love. And all you gotta do to get started is take their 30-second quiz to figure out what meal plan your dog needs. They base it off your dog's weight, activity level, a couple of other details, and then they send you your first welcome box, which has 2 weeks of meals inside. Also has a storage container and some instructions on how to properly switch over your dog's diet. That is very important. You cannot just switch the food quickly on your pup, okay? But but your dog will thank you. You know the times where you look at those meals and you're like, ooh, why does that sound like it's for me? Because that's what Ollie is. It's human grade food for dogs. They've got their full meal plan, but then they also have a topper plan that you can just mix in what they already have. You could use that to transition, or you can even just try the freshly baked treats for your dog. Yes, fresh baked human grade treats. So look, if you want to give Ollie a shot, you can actually get their welcome box for 60% off right now. Afterwards, of course, it is a weekly, but if you want to give it a go, all you got to do is go to ollie.com/sinister, or you can enter the code in at checkout and you'll get 60% off of the first box. That's ollie.com/sinister, or click the link in the description. They started trying for a kid right after they got married, and they tried and they tried and they tried, and it just wasn't happening. Lauren had also dealt with a lot of period pains and a lot of other symptoms over the years, but the depression was such a major battle. This didn't really get noticed until later, and she found out that she had endometriosis. Endometriosis is a condition where the tissue grows outside of the uterus. The main thing for women is that it has so many terrible symptoms like chronic pain, but the biggest thing for Lauren in this case was the unexpected infertility. They tried and they tried for about 3 years. I know people talk sometimes about realizing how difficult it is to conceive sometimes, or eventually how much money it costs, but I don't think people talk about that period of time where you're just hoping and praying that your body's going to get it right. And for 2 years, Lauren and Graham tried over and over and over and over again. There's this period where you're literally waiting for your period, oh my God, am I pregnant? Did it work this time? And then it's letdown after letdown after letdown with every period, until they finally decided that they needed some kind of medical assistance in order to conceive. Lauren did not give up. She wanted to have a child, and she wanted to have a family with Graham. They ended up trying IVF 17 times. It took 4 years for Lauren to eventually and finally get pregnant. It eventually happened in 2012, and it was a really exciting time. Lauren had been waiting for this moment. She already had a couple names picked out, but she knew as soon as she realized that she was actually pregnant that this girl's name was going to be Sarah. She and Graham were overjoyed that it finally worked. They were going to have a little one of her own, and she got to carry. But unfortunately, on the 18th week of her pregnancy, Lauren got out of bed and she passed out on the floor. Lauren was by herself at the time, and when she woke up in a pool of blood, and she realized that she had miscarried. If you can, take a minute to sit with that. I cannot imagine the devastation that she felt when she woke up. Eventually, baby Sarah was born without a heartbeat. They were allowed to briefly hold her. Both Lauren and Graham were allowed to hold baby Sarah, and then they took her away. Lauren never forgot that moment. I don't even think that I need to go into detail to explain to you guys the 4.5 years that they spent trying and trying and trying and trying to have this baby, all for it to end with Lauren waking up in a literal pool of blood and then holding her child that never got to take a breath before they took her away forever. Lauren often would talk about how excited she was to have Sarah, to have somebody to love her back and understand her, and to raise her to be a good woman. She was already planning so many things around it, and it was just destroyed. Losing Sarah obviously took a massive toll on Lauren. She was actually unable to return to work, so she started working for her husband Graham as a physician's assistant. This worked out just fine for quite a while. But then also Graham said, "Lauren, we're not giving up. We are going to have children. You are going to be the mother that you always wanted to be." But the next step option for them was to conceive via an egg donor, which means that these would not necessarily be Lauren's biological children, but they would still be hers. So in 2014, it actually all works out, and finally, their first daughter is born. Their first daughter was named Leanne. When she got a little bit older, Lauren would kind of talk about her demeanor, and she said that she was very sweet, very lovable. She was a big dreamer, very imaginative, and like she always had new ideas that she wanted to explore. And then in 2018, they actually also had twins, Carla and Maya. So they had a family of 3 girls. Now, they've got the whole family together, but one thing that was a little bit difficult was Carla was born with a cleft palate. So they had to have a lot of surgeries early on with her, and she needed a lot of medical attention. For Lauren, this started to all become very stressful. She wanted to be a mother, but remember I told you that there's just that big gray cloud that hangs over people with major depression? It was still there. Being a mom is not easy. And being a mom to 3 is, hey, I just got to tell you guys out there that you got a couple of kids, y'all are super parents because it is a handful. It's a lot. And Lauren was mentally ready to become a mother, but she had just been through so much through the years of IVF and trying to conceive. She also was fighting through employment issues and just not being able to get out of bed most days. And then now she's got all the girls and they need a lot of attention, a lot of love. They need to be bathed, fed. They need a lot of things. And Lauren kind of slowly starts to feel like she wasn't prepared for this. The good thing is, Graham makes a bit of money. They were doing all right. So they were actually able to hire a full-time nanny. I just think every picture with Maria and the girls is just the cutest. You can tell that she has so much love for them. You can tell she's happy to be there. Hey, I'm calling it. Based off of these photos alone, Maria was a great nanny. For audio listeners, she is holding both of the twins in her arms, smiling super big. Their eldest child, Leanne, looks like comfortable and safe being around Maria. It's a really great pairing, and she seemed to really love the kids. She also talked a little bit more about Carla later. She said Carla was just a total firecracker. Maya was always laughing and smiling at everybody. With Maria's help, something happened that they didn't really expect. Lauren was able to take steps away a bit more often, and with that empty space, the depression crept in even further. I'm going to start to tell you guys more details specifically of Lauren's thoughts. She talked about them later in interrogations and in court. I will just kind of describe them verbatim, but I do want to go ahead and mention it seems to me like she had some OCD traits. What we're about to talk about to me echoes as something that are usually called morbid obsessions, where you're constantly afraid of something really horrible. For example, if you're afraid of heights and you're standing in front of a balcony, there's this thing called the quote call to the void where you're like, oh my God, I should just jump. I should just jump off of this balcony. My understanding of the call to the void is sometimes we're so afraid of something that we constantly think about it over and over and over again. And then eventually our brain goes, well, I'm going to take control of it by just doing this thing that I'm so afraid of so that at least I did it. These thoughts and these fears are very real. They're also all-consuming. If you don't have any resources and you don't know what to do, it can be very debilitating. I won't mention too much about the OCD aspect because that's just my opinion, but I will read you her thoughts. And I just wanted to add that in because a lot of court documents heavily state her depression and anxiety, which were prevalent. What we're about to talk about to me seems more like ruminating thoughts that may have been caused by a trauma. Today's episode of Sinister is sponsored by ZocDoc. Look, I've been telling you for the longest time, if you need to go to the doctor, the last thing you want to do is probably pick up the phone. And especially if you don't even have a primary care doctor and you got to go through your insurance and find a doctor that takes your insurance that's also nearby and is also actually rated well. It's all on ZocDoc, okay? Listen, people don't always go out of their way to leave like Google reviews on doctors. Sometimes they do, but like on ZocDoc, they send you an email afterwards and they're like, hey, how was your experience? How would you rate this doctor? So you're getting hundreds of reviews from real patients that booked this particular doctor just like you on ZocDoc. I just love that you can see all the ratings right there. You can also see how close they are to your location. And the best part is, before you even start searching for the type of doctor you need, put in your insurance so you can make sure you're only seeing people that take your insurance. Gone are the days of sitting on the phone for God knows how long, trying to find a date that's like, what, 2-3 months out so that you can get something checked out that's bothering you right now. Look at this. Sometimes ZocDoc has appointments available as soon as 72 hours, 48 hours, and sometimes if you're in a big city, you can even get a same-day appointment. So look, stop putting off what's bothering you and try ZocDoc. It's totally free. But all I ask you is if you try it out, use our code and let them know where you came from. So it's ZocDoc.com/sinister. You got to go to that link. It's ZocDoc.com/sinister or click the link in the description. So as the girls got a little bit older, Carla started to be a bit more handsy. She would sometimes lash out and slap or bite Lauren. When Carla got to be this age, this is where Lauren was just like, oh my God, I can't do this, which is like crazy to me because this is what always happens in Sinister. We look at the person they were, and like when I think about Lauren wanting to have a child so badly, she went through IVF 17 times, the miscarriage, the everything, like I know she wanted to have that child for sure, okay? And then now that she has her beautiful daughters, she's just like, please give them to Maria or Carla bit me. I don't want to do this anymore. By all accounts, everything that I've read, it sounds like the kids were just being kids. Maria has really, really fond memories of them. But for Lauren, she started to turn and decide that the kids were too much for her. In May of 2019, when the twins were just a few years old and then their oldest, Leanne, was only about 5, Lauren started having thoughts of killing her children. And she articulated this to Graham and to other people by kind of making what she tried to pass off as small jokes, but it all started in 2019. Now, by 2020, COVID had hit and everybody is locked inside of their homes. Lauren would try to escape from the kids by going to work or, of course, passing them off to Maria, but now it is time for her to be at home and be a mother. At the time, she and Graham were still working pretty hard because, of course, it is COVID and they work in a hospital. They were actually prepping for a move to New Zealand and also coming up on their 15-year wedding anniversary. Lauren actually wrote this Facebook post. It was like a very loving tribute to Graham. So, you know, to the outside perspective, everything was fine. They were celebrating 15 years. But in the post that was, you know, saying all these wonderful things about her husband, she mentions the, quote, beautiful family they had created, and then also mentioned sleepless nights, saying, may the next years be more blessed, more happy, and may the kids let us sleep. Now, they make it through the bulk of the pandemic, but by May of 2021, Maria, the nanny, was no longer with them. She had moved on to something else after taking care of the girls for 3 years. She had been taking care of Leanne since she was like 2 years old or so, but she had been taking care of the twins since they were born. She was like an integral part of this family. And not only that, but now all of those hours that she was spending with the children would have to be picked up by Lauren and Graham. Now, remember I said that they were possibly going to New Zealand? Well, they had been talking about it, doing a little research here and there. They had some job opportunities there, but also they just felt like New Zealand would be safer for them and their kids, especially during the midst of the pandemic. And look, I get it. In 2021, we had no idea how long all of this would be going on. But in order to move to a new country with all 3 of your children, you gotta fill out a lot of paperwork. So now, Maria is gone. Lauren is taking care of the children. Graham is always at work, very, very busy. And now Lauren is also at home filling out paperwork, visas, arranging the plane tickets. She had to find movers that would take care of things all during the quarantine and the pandemic. And then they've got to fly the whole family out internationally and set everything up. That is stressful. That is stressful. I think for a moment she thought that going to New Zealand would be like a fresh start and that everything was going to be better, but this is a massive undertaking, especially when you're even having problems taking care of the children. All of the stress, all of the depression, all of the anxiety, just everything was compounded on her, but she just tried to fight through it. Now, to make things worse, a couple of things happened. One, Lauren had to have a foot operation, which kept getting delayed because of COVID. So every visa or plane ticket or anything they booked, it actually kept getting pushed back a little bit. Lauren's anxiety and stress weighed so heavily on her that, do you remember I said that she was getting surgery on her foot and she had a couple operations? Well, during this same week, she actually had to get sedated for foot surgery, and they gave her an anesthetic, and she woke up during the anesthesia. She just had so much going on. Anesthesia couldn't even knock this woman out. Then they stayed at Graham's mother's house with all of their belongings and their suitcases leading up to the move. So remember all that stress that I told you about? Well, now imagine you are staying at your mother-in-law's house with all of the children and a couple of your things packed up in bags. God, this sounds like a nightmare. They were only supposed to stay for 4 or 5 days, but then one of their daughters tested positive for COVID, so they had to stay at his mother's house for about 2 weeks. Graham later reflected on this, and he said, quote, "Didn't eat much, and she didn't have a lot of conversation with anybody. She was just really, really stressed." So this goes on for a couple of months, but finally in September of 2021, they're out of there and they make the big move to New Zealand. Now, what's interesting about this is from the day that they left and went to New Zealand, Lauren was texting a lot of people, people checking in. Oh, how's the move going? Is everything okay? And later they looked at her messages and she was texting everybody like it was just normal. Everything was fine. This was going to be amazing. But she later told the investigators that this day was particularly stressful. She said, quote, "Anxiety was eating a hole in my stomach. I just couldn't think straight." And she knew in the back of her mind that something was really, really going on because she ended up reaching out to this doctor. Lauren had been seeing this specialist on a regular basis, but she was having these conversations with her husband that he was hoping might get repaired through the therapy. However, she one day told her husband, "I want to make the twins quiet." And when he said to her, "How do you want to do that?" she said, quote, "Maybe put a pillow over their heads. I just want peace and quiet for 30 minutes. And she kind of tried to pass it off as a joke. She told her husband that she really didn't mean it. Graham knows that she's getting care, but she's been talking about this since 2019, and it's getting scary. But then Lauren starts to say some extreme things to her husband about the children. At one point, she had a thought, and she told her husband about it. She said, "An image flashed into my head of sedating the girls, putting them in the bath, cutting their femoral arteries, and putting them to bed." When she told her husband again about these thoughts that were happening all throughout 2021, he was getting scared but also angry. At one point, he said to her, "Do you realize what you're telling me? If anyone could hear what you're saying, they would lock you up and you would never see the girls again." And she said, "I'm very scared. That's why I'm telling you." And he told her to, quote, "Put on your big girl panties," and pull herself together for him and the girls. Lauren later recounted this conversation because she said this was the turning point. She said that after this, she no longer felt comfortable articulating her concerns and fears and thoughts to her husband. Now, her concerns and fears and thoughts were not just regular anxieties like most of us have. She literally said femoral arteries to her husband about her children, about her daughters, which, by the way, I like to know, empathy cap is off. It's gone. It's been gone for Lauren for a minute because I'm like, what is going on? Is she triggered by the fact that she has all girls? I don't understand. The one thread that I can think of is when you experience an extremely traumatic death of someone that you care about, or maybe it was a caretaker, a close friend, a family member, and it doesn't get resolved. There are no answers from God or the universe of why did this happen to me. Sometimes people will tend to ruminate on death. I wonder if there's a world where when she held Sarah, when she lost her child and she was born without the heartbeat, if her first connection with her first child that she could actually have was death. And she has this theme in her head of something connected with her children and death because she never got over Sarah. But she seems to obsessively think constantly about, oh my God, death, 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 death. And it's extreme. This is also why I mentioned the possible OCD component there. That's just my opinion. This sounds like that to me. She said 3 different ways that she wanted to kill her children all at once. And she laid in the bed that night thinking about it over and over and over and over again. And man, I don't care if you had a miscarriage, if you have severe OCD or da-da-da-da. Like, if you are playing movies in your head of almost killing your children, you have to leave. And I know she was in therapy, but like, I'm sorry. You guys know I get invested in these cases. Graham at this point is like, holy shit. We need to take you to the psychiatric ward or something. Like, we have to do something. And she convinced him, no. This is going to mess up the immigration if we do this. So let's not do that. Don't check me in anywhere. It'll look suspicious and it might mess up all the paperwork that I've done. So they didn't. And Lauren continued to have thoughts of killing the children, but told no one. She was no longer seeing the therapist. She was not telling Graham any of these things. And now the thoughts were just playing in her head over and over and over and over again. One thing that Lauren ruminated over, when they were packing up to leave South Africa, they had these zip ties so that they could keep the suitcases closed. But what's interesting is Lauren actually said that the first thought she had when she saw those zip ties, and this says so much, the first thought she had was, quote, "This is another way that the children could get hurt." I don't know if she thought that the zip ties were dangerous, so then she started seeing them as a tool to kill in some capacity. But her first thought was, I need to keep the kids away from the zip ties because it could hurt them. But then for some reason, that thought, and all of this information comes from her own testimony, that thought switched to killing her children with the zip ties. She told the investigators that she, quote, saw still shots of the girls laying in the bath. That's how she described it. Like, she was picturing her children laying in the bath with the zip ties on them and them being unable to do anything. I have never heard of morbid thoughts going this deeply and this obsessively before, or maybe she's just really candid about them. Now, having thoughts about fears and anxieties, that's normal. Like, have you guys heard how, like, when people have severe OCD, they'll have negative thoughts, bad things about themselves, things that they would never act on, but it plays over and over and over and over again. Okay, I know I said before that I wasn't going to harp too much on the OCD thing, but I'm like, nobody realized, like, what was going on because, like, she's saying it. It's, like, so black and white. I'm not diagnosing, but I have eyes and ears, and you do too. And if anybody has experience with OCD, like, I don't know, leave a comment, tell me something. The family had not even been in New Zealand for a week. It was September 2021. And with no nanny in sight, Graham no longer hearing her horrifying thoughts, and no one to talk to, this was the day that Lauren lost it. It was the first day of school, and Graham took the twins to their first day of preschool, and then they took their eldest daughter to her primary school. According to the school staff, it was a Christian preschool. They said that the twins arrived well prepared. They had all of their supplies. They were just well put together. They had nice, clean clothes. Their hair was all done. They looked at these kids and they said, oh, okay, like, yeah, they're being taken care of. Everything's fine. They actually said that there were signs of an organized, caring mother determined to make a good impression on the preschool. Graham went to work that day, and he left Lauren at home to tend to any family life, admin, anything. And what's interesting about this is all the girls were in school. Lauren did have her 30 minutes of peace that she wanted. In fact, Graham went out and had lunch with some colleagues, and then he headed home at around 2:30 or so. He met up with Lauren and the girls, and they went on a walk to the playground. It was like a normal day. Afterwards, he came home. They had their usual evening, and then Graham had to leave to go to a work function. Before he left, he said that they showered the kids, they put their pajamas on. And after Graham left, Lauren was exhausted. She said that she felt overwhelmed from the request from the immigration in New Zealand for specialist reports on her mental health, as well as extra reports on like her daughter's cleft palate, what kind of things that she would need. She just had these day-to-day admin tasks that she said were really bogging her down. She said she walked down the hallway and she saw her kids' empty lunch boxes sitting on the kitchen bench, but she had no energy to do anything. She couldn't even make them lunch the next day. She said that in this moment, the thoughts of hurting her children started to return to her again. And she said she was thinking, I just can't do another day of this. She said that things to her felt, quote, too big, and she had no reserves left at all. She also was worried that Graham was tired of her and irritated. She said that she went to the children that night and said, Mommy's very sick and is going to die. I can't leave you behind because I don't know who's going to look after you. And then she tells the investigators that's the last thing that she remembered before everything happened. Graham came home from the work event at about 10 o'clock at night. He said that when he got inside, the house was quiet and Lauren was in the main room, just no kids nearby, no sounds, no nothing. It was just disorienting and a strange energy. He said, quote, I left for the meeting. I had supper and went home. I parked quietly, unlocked the door, took off my shoes. I went into the living room and saw my wife standing in the kitchen without my kids. He said he knew something was wrong. She just looked completely off. He knew what had been going on for the past couple of years. He said that he asked her if she was okay and she didn't respond. And he asked her what was the matter and she said to him, it's too late. Graham told the investigators, I realized that there is something strange in her face. It was a facial expression I had never seen before. He ran to his children's room and he said in his own words, I pulled back the duvet and Leanna's face was pale. I tried to wake her up and that's when I noticed the cable ties around her neck. I shook her by the shoulders, spoke to her, probably yelled at her. I don't think I picked her up at that stage. I think I just really tried to wake her. And then I ran for the twins' room and I saw the same thing. I think I tried to wake both of them briefly before I ran into the kitchen to get the scissors. I panicked. I asked her what she'd done. I grabbed the scissors and I went to Leanne's room and I cut the cable tie. Went to the twins, cut the cable ties. I cut the cable tie around Leanne's neck first and I pulled her out on the ground and I tried to give her 2 breaths. After that, I ran into the twins and I cut the cable ties around their necks and I was in a panic. I screamed their names, checked, grabbed their shoulders. I think I could see the color on their faces, but it was futile and I cut the cable ties. I couldn't see any signs of life. I got Leanne onto the floor. I couldn't see any signs of breathing, any heartbeat, and she was lifeless. Lauren had killed all 3 of her children by strangling them with zip cable ties and smothering them with a blanket just 20 minutes after her husband had left for the work function. After Graham found the children, he said that he just walked out of the house in a daze. Lauren passed out on the floor and he was so angry and just so shocked and so upset he didn't even check on her. He had just gotten to New Zealand. He did not know the emergency number and he ran outside and ran back inside and called a friend and said, please just come now. He didn't know what to do. He didn't even know the emergency number. He ran back outside and he was just screaming. He was just yelling. He was just calling their names and crying, and it woke up some neighbors and they came out to talk to him and say, what's going on? What's happening? And he couldn't answer. He couldn't say anything except, is this really happening? His friend called the police as soon as he got the call. And when he got there, he said that he found Graham in the back of the house just walking around and screaming. When the police arrived, he actually just recounted the last couple of years with his wife, saying that she was just a big ball of anxiety a lot of the time. She had lost a lot of weight. She wasn't eating. He said Lauren was not in a good place. It's always been her personality to stress about things and to anticipate things that are going to go wrong and worry about them before they go wrong. But he said he didn't realize that she was struggling so much. He said, obviously, there was something deeper that I didn't recognize. I've been married to her for 15 years, and not in my wildest dreams did I imagine something like this. I just want to take a quick minute to mention that people with major depression or severe OCD features don't just do stuff like this. Personally, I think this is a giant concoction of her early life in the girls' school and not really dealing with everything that happened to her there. And then also possibly not feeling biologically connected to her children. Oh my God, not to mention the traumatic stillbirth of Sarah after they tried so long to conceive. This was just a horrible, horrible, tragic combination of events over her entire life. I have a lot of other details about what happened that night, but for obvious reasons, I think we've said enough. We know. But I do want to tell you some things that she said to the detectives, that it just... She told them that she had killed Carla, one of the twins, first. She said, I did the twins first. The first one was being really, really, really horrible to me lately. She had been biting me and hitting me and scratching me and throwing tantrums 24 hours a day. And I just don't know how to manage that. That's why I did her first. She told the police that after she knew that they had passed, she tucked them into their beds and put the blankets over their heads. She said, then I decided I had to do something with myself. I ran through the house and none of the knives were sharp. And then I just started drinking my medication that I could find. She claimed to the police that afterwards she wanted to die. But Lauren stayed in that house for hours with her children. She admitted to the crimes and she was promptly arrested for murder. The trial gained international attention, and a week after the girls' deaths, there was a candlelight vigil held in New Zealand as well as in South Africa. Hundreds of people showed up to honor them. They heard about the story, and I mean, it was everywhere. The trial had a lot of attention on it because of the gruesomeness of the crime, but also, there was a discussion around mental health and postpartum depression. Lauren pleaded not guilty to the murder. She claimed that she was severely mentally disturbed at the time and did not know that what she was doing was morally wrong. I still say the way that she talks about her girls when no one else talks about them that way, I think that's coming from something personal. Lauren is not, in my opinion, just a victim of depression or major depression. There was something else going on. When the trial opened up, the prosecution argued and actually had a lot of evidence to support that Lauren was resentful, that the girls seemed to like Graham more than her. Graham admitted that he thought Lauren did not enjoy having the kids, and he did feel like the kids preferred him more. He said, she was not a nurturing mother. The kids preferred me. Not so much Leanne anymore because she's a big girl, but the twins definitely preferred me. She was struggling with motherhood, and I think compensated for that by giving the kids everything they needed on a social level. The prosecution also said that they had reason to believe that she was frustrated, resentful, and jealous that she claimed the children were getting in the way of her relationship with Graham, which she valued Graham more than anything. Now, the defense, on the other hand, they tried to argue, hey, this is just postpartum depression. She lost it. No. She's a really loving and nurturing mother. They said, in her mind, she was killing them out of love. She was hurting herself and she didn't want to leave the children. She was so sure that this was the right thing to do, she persisted. This is about postpartum depression and a mother who killed her children. She did not want to leave her children without a mom, and she also did not want her children to suffer from having such a bad mother. When the search history got entered into evidence, it uncovered multiple searches for drug overdoses in children. They also found text messages on her phone. There was one that was sent to a friend, and it said, I'm going to start Leanne on Augmentin, which is an antibiotic, tonight. She woke me up until 3 a.m. this morning, but I sent her to school. Otherwise, I might strangle her. She moans all the time and kicked me out of bed while I wanted to comfort her. Another message that she sent to her friend said, I can't anymore. I'm afraid I'm going to take out my whole family if they announce this tonight. Years and years and years of her making these aggressive claims. For me personally, when I look at pictures of Lauren, I see somebody that looks like they could be really sweet and really nice deep down inside. But when I read these messages, her saying she woke me up until 3 a.m. in the morning, otherwise I might strangle. Who the
fuck says that about their kid? Especially somebody that's been saying this stuff for 3 years over and over and over again. Like, I cannot forget her saying to her husband something about the femoral artery. Insane. Absolutely insane. Finally, the jury comes in with their verdict. It's 11-1 guilty. And not only that, they did not buy her insanity plea. Those text messages were too methodic. They seemed resentful. It seemed like she had other thoughts and projections about the children. This was not a loving mother that just kind of slipped up. This was someone that seemed to be fantasizing about her children's death for years. After the verdict, people in the courtroom said that Lauren seemed extremely shocked, but she did make a statement where she seemed a bit apologetic, saying, "I take responsibility for taking our 3 beautiful girls from this world. I would like to take this opportunity to convey the deepest and most sincere remorse for the extreme pain and hurt caused to my children and my family by my actions." Lauren wasn't found insane, but she was committed to a mental institution until she was well enough to go to prison. After Lauren was sent off to jail, Graham returned to South Africa. He actually has forgiven her, and he said, "I've not only lost my wife with my children, but my life with my wife, Lauren. I have also lost everything with regards to my children growing up. I will not see them turning into beautiful young women, finding their own husbands, and starting their own families. I've had to make peace with this. I've managed to accept my current position in life." I feel like this case just hits me in 1,000 different places at once. There's anger, there's empathy, there's understanding, there's absolutely not understanding. I think one thing that is certainly true is Lauren Ann Dickason's case is incredibly complex. And there are going to be parts of it that some of you relate to in a very deep way. And some parts that you guys are so far removed from, you're like, I don't understand how the heck that could possibly happen. So, of course, sometimes I get fired up in these cases, but I really tried to break down threads and themes in life that many of us have experienced. And I always welcome you to tell me your experience, what you perceived from certain things. It expands my view of things. I read a lot of y'all's experiences, just understanding what you relate to and what you don't. And sometimes you see little blind spots that I haven't been through, so I may not notice. This one is a pretty deep one. It's pretty complex, and I want to hear all your thoughts.